Okay, then, so without using any Greek,
Okay.
no Greek at all,
Well, none.
no Greek.
No Greek.
Could you answer the question, what is philosophy?
I think without Greek, without Latin, I think philosophy is about looking at yourself in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reflective process, I think, and we all do it. I mean, philosophy is something we all do. If you kind of get up in the morning and you're asking yourself, how do I look today? Who am I going to see today? You know, what is my purpose today? All of these philosophical questions, they're just questions about you in the world, and I think that's all we've got. I mean, philosophy doesn't exist doesn't exist without people. It's a uniquely human conscious exercise. It's us thinking about ourselves.
But so I think the word itself, philosophy, makes people it separates that kind of everyday thinking to, oh, this is proper thinking. We're going to do it in a room.
Yeah.
With professors and stuff like that. I think it might, the average person on the street. I remember when I met an old school friend, and they said, "Oh, what are you doing now?" I was like, I was looking all proud. I'm studying philosophy, and he looked at me and, "Oh, deep."
Yeah.
And
he's probably thinking to himself, "Ponds."
Yeah. So that, but the thing is that he had a kind of a preconceived idea of what it is.
And it doesn't do itself any favours because, if you say, oh, philosophy, it's the love of knowledge, it sets it up as if you have a particular love affair with knowledge, and only special people have that kind of relationship. And I don't really think that that's what philosophy is for. I mean, it's like a lot of things. There are people who can be professional philosophers who maybe getting paid to do that job. And that's all fine and dandy in the same way as there are professional artists who are getting they got patronage from somewhere, they're getting paid for something. But you don't have to do these things professionally for you to be doing them authentically. A lot of people cook, doesn't make them chefs. They're not getting paid, and they're not getting TV shows hanging on their every word about how they're cooking stuff, although we're getting a lot of TV shows like that. But it's something you do because you enjoy doing it and because it's part of the human condition. We like to eat. We need food. We like to have our senses stimulated. All these sorts of things are things we like to do as human beings. And philosophy is no different. Philosophy is something that we all do because for the most part, we like to think about our lives and we like to think about the world we're in, and we come at it in different ways. But some people are paid to do it. And I think that's the distraction.
Yeah.
People look at the profession rather than the activity.
Do you think it is, in my mind I thought it wasn't, but do you think it is more accessible as an idea to the majority of people, or does it still have a kind of stuffy academic vibe?
I think you're right. I think it does. I think people think when they think of a philosopher, a professional philosopher, they have this kind of view of people in robes. Okay, you're supposed to, and they have that kind of Greek understanding of the philosopher in the robes, kind of holding forth. Or you have the philosophers from Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide, talking about kind of deep thought. And Douglas Adams does undermine the whole business of the philosopher, because you see these guys saying, yes, we're trying to discover what the meaning of life, the universe, of everything is. And then they realise that if you've discovered the answer, then they're doing themselves out of a job. So they recognise that the professional philosopher does this for a living. And so you don't really want to find what the true answer is. So I think there is that image of the philosopher who is somehow distant from the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's an unfortunate image, really.
And it's also because I think you probably could tell me more about this, but it's because of the specialisms. Like, what I mean by that is philosophy now, if you're making money from it, then you are specialising. So they say really a lot about very, very little. And I remember getting into astronomy.
Oh, right.
And getting my first telescope and looking at Jupiter or something like that. And what would it be like to be a professional astronomer? And apparently they just look at computer screens and numbers.
Yeah, it's not all that exciting, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, you're not looking at these big celestial bodies with the naked eye, because all the interesting stuff is beyond the reach of the the naked eye. That doesn't mean to say that the stuff that you can see with the naked eye, with a cheap telescope, lying in your garden of a night, is not fascinating and authentically astronomy.
So it's.
It's still. Lying in your garden with your cheap telescope, with your sun staring into the sky. Yeah. That's astronomy. You're looking at the stars. You're asking questions. It contextualizes where you are. Well, here I am on this planet. Yeah. What's that up there? I mean, there are small pinpricks of light. Oh my goodness me, these are suns. There are planets around these, and it kind of helps to make you feel. It helps to contextualise where you are in the world. And I think philosophy is like that. You can be lying on your back in a garden, contemplating the meaning of your life, or why you got up this morning, or what you've been doing over the last year, whether you want to change in your job, whether you are happy with your relationship, whether things make sense. That is perfectly legitimate philosophical activity. You don't necessarily have to be in some sacred library somewhere in Oxford, for example, poring over texts that nobody else understands, probably in Greek or German.
Philosophy, or just thinking about the world, thinking about yourself, thinking about the universe, is so natural, and a part of. When I was younger, I thought about it's just like a part of your learning. I remember the first time I thought about something like that was. Or I remember thinking something about similar. Was lying on some grass with my friends when I was a teenager, and we're just looking at the stars, like you say, really like cliche kind of thing. Yeah. And you're thinking about the expanse of the universe. Where does it end? And I feel like that's a normal part of your learning. As much as when you're a baby and you're learning about your hands and feet.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, when you talk about babies, a good example. I remember when my daughter was very young, and I was reading a lot of Hegel at that time, just because, I don't know. And Hegel was talking about how the universe and everything in it is all part of a single synthetic thing. It's all part of one thing, and it looks as if there are lots of little bits and component bits all broken up, but the universe has a sort of consciousness to it. He had a kind of Eastern vibe to a lot of his work, and he says the universe is coming to an awareness of itself, and how it does this is it encounters things that it thinks are different to itself. So it'll encounter, so it's like, I'll encounter you, I will take you as an entirely different being to me. But then in conversation and in interaction, we realise that actually we're all part of the same species, we're part of humanity, we're part of this world. And bit by bit, the universe starts to reintegrate itself into its a more mature consciousness. And I think this is quite clever. And then I saw my daughter, and she was lying on the floor kicking around as they do at that age. And I could see her living inside. She grabbed her foot, because she didn't really understand what this was. She saw this foot in her field of vision, and she took this to be something other than herself, something distinct, until she bit it. So she grabbed it and she bit her foot, and then she went, "Ah, crap!" And she started to cry. And then she realised actually this is all joined up. And part of, I think it's one of the things that Hegel teaches us at a very basic level, that everything's joined up. And the more we engage with the world, the more we realise that there are all these kind of connections between ourselves and the world we live in. And I think that's a valuable thing, which you don't need to read Hegel to know about. You see this in the world.
Yeah, I'm glad I wouldn't have to read Hegel, because I tried reading Hegel before, and it's really, really difficult.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah.
I prefer for a lot of the philosophers just reading the chapter. Chapter page of it.
Yeah. Just the blurb on the back of the book, normally enough.
Yeah. What a question I'd like to ask here is that I heard someone say once, they heard people talking about their drug experiences, right? So taking LSD and stuff like that. Who is it? Some famous people took it as well, like Steve Jobs and people like that. And Stephen King, that was it. I was reading about Stephen King. He was saying like LSD emptied the crap out of his mind. Yeah, and it made him like focus and stuff like that. And is that like doing philosophy itself is like taking kind of mind-altering drugs, which you have so it's like a tool. We look at the stars with the naked eye, but taking a telescope or whatever, binoculars, whatever. There's like a tool for making the experience more solid or more taking it further. And someone once said, philosophy is like taking drugs, without the drugs. What do you think about that?
The drugs without the drugs sort of takes the fun out of it, really, isn't it? I'm not entirely sure. I can see where that's going. I'm not entirely sure. I would follow that line of reasoning exactly, because I think what you have with drugs is you have a kind of perception altering experience. So what you're doing is you're not changing the world around you, because the world around you remains pretty much the same. When you take some sort of drug, it affects the way you perceive the world. So you take this thing. It's like getting drunk. Okay, I mean, we want to get it to a kind of a standard level. If you're not talking about kind of hardcore drugs, you go out, you have a few beers. Bit by bit, the world starts to seem a different place, and because the world seems like a different place, you start to behave differently in it. You might behave more belligerently, in a more angry way, or you might come across as a lot more confident. A lot of people come across as far more confident when they've had a few drinks, because the world seems kind of easier to engage with. So all you're doing is you're messing with your perception of the world. You're putting on a different set of glasses. And you think, this is really sharp, or this is really kind of more soft focus. You're putting filters on the way you see the world. And I think philosophy is like that. That the more you think in a particular philosophical way, the more you start to filter your understanding of reality through that. So it's like putting on different glasses. So if you start thinking, what am I? What am I? Okay, I'm a human being. Have I got any particular meaning? Yes, I've got meaning. I'm really important. For example, God has made me, so I'm a really important, really valuable thing, and people ought to piss around with me. Now, if you've got that perspective that you're really important and people shouldn't take the piss out of you because God has made you that way, or you have an immortal soul or whatever, then when you're at work, when people start to do things to you, you can say, hang on a minute, you can't do that to me, because that is not how you should be behaving to me, because I am valuable. If you're in a relationship and you have that view that you are valuable, you're much more likely to turn around and say, no, I'm a human being, you do not treat me that way. So your perspective on the world and how you should be treated is altered by that philosophical point of view. If you say, well, basically, I'm just an animal, and I'm just influenced by the things around me, then that's going to affect the way you see the world as well. You can say, well, okay, if I'm just an animal, I'm just affected by what goes on around me. If I'm at work and somebody's trying to take the piss out of me and trying to get more work out of me and trying to put pressure on me, they've got the right to do that, but I've got the right to fight back if I want to. I can't turn around and say you're wrong, because there is no kind of right and wrong in that thing. But I can then turn around and say, well, I need to find my own way of dealing with the situation. And if you're being dealt with poorly by your partner, you can't turn around and say, you can't treat me like this because I'm valuable. But you can turn around and say, well, okay, I'm going to get them back. So it might affect. So it'll affect the way you behave in the world. So it's just like putting on different. It's like putting on different sets of glasses, or and seeing the world in a different way. So in that respect, I think
perceptual experience.
Yes. So you're messing with your perceptions.
Okay. Okay. Can philosophy make my life better, or can it make it worse? The red pill syndrome.
Yes, I think is probably the answer to that. I mean, it can make your life better to an extent. I mean, philosophy gives you a sense of perspective. And it gives you a sense of structure. In that respect, there are similarities to religion, and there are philosophies which are, practically you couldn't get a Rizla between some philosophies and a religion. They provide you with what some philosophers call a grand narrative, a big story which holds everything together. This is Hegel is a good example of that, and it can help a lot of people to say, well, this is my place in the world, and I understand this. I understand who and what I am, and because I understand who and what I am, I understand how I should behave to other people, how I should expect other people to behave to me, what my values are. When I'm voting, who should I vote for? It's not just an arbitrary thing about who's going to give me the best tax breaks, or who's going to fund the NHS best. It's a much bigger thing. You can say, okay, I'm voting this way because the values that this particular group enshrine are the values that I think are the most useful and the most appropriate. So it can help you have a much more coherent understanding of the world and your place in it. But then you've got that whole kind of ignorance is bliss thing, that the more you start thinking about the things, the more you can agonise.
So was it who said the satisfied pig?
Oh, that was that Jeremy Bentham? It was in, or was it? No, it was in response to Jeremy Bentham. I can't remember who said this now. I mean, Jeremy Bentham was the ethicist who said that essentially ethics is to do with the greatest happiness for the greatest number. And he said that ethics is all to do with that. It's nothing to do with God, and it's nothing to do with kind of religion or objective values that have been handed down on stone. Thou shalt not kill, for example. Absolutely, you must never do that because God says so, and all lives are sacred. Killing is wrong because it makes a lot of people unhappy. If it made a lot of people, more people happy than unhappy, then perhaps it's justifiable. And somebody said, and it skipped my mind right now, that according to Bentham, then the most ethical thing in the world is the happy pig. As long as it's kind of happy rolling around in muck and eating kind of pig food, it's perfectly happy, perfectly ethical. But we are more than that. Human beings are more than just the happy pigs.
It is a big question because immediately you want to say, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be a happy pig. Then you think, well, if you're happy,
absolutely. I mean, it's as you say. You talk about the red pill and the blue pill, and you have the guy in the Matrix movie sort of saying, well, I'm going to sell out my friends here, and I know what you're offering me isn't real. It's the steak I'm eating is not real, and the environment is not real, and all these women you're offering me and all this kind of lifestyle, it's not real. But as long as I think it's real. Who cares? And sometimes and we see this in people's relationships. They're prepared to kind of live a lie because they won't interrogate how they're being treated, for example.
Bad faith.
Yeah, it is that bad faith, and you get endless stories of people in abusive relationships, for example, who refuse to examine the nature of the relationship. And create this kind of virtual world where it's all fine, everything's fine, and they'll be better later on as just a one-off experience, and it just kind of keeps happening. And maybe they are happy. I mean, I sometimes think that taking kind of a philosophical career, professional philosophical career, I sometimes think that's probably made me more miserable and git-like than I should be because you overthink.
And you I think you pass judgment a lot.
You do,
you think, well, I've learned these things, so I know better. But what you just mentioned there about, seeing someone who you're saying you think, oh, they're having a bad life. That person, she's not, he's not happy or she's not happy, and then as you get older, I think you notice you get to a feeling of it's more complicated than that. But life is not a series of really kind of black or white things, and we're not that person. We don't know what they really think, really feel. But so returning to the idea of, can it be bad for you? I don't know if it can ever be bad for you. I just think it can make life clearer. So you know that the feelings you have that are bad or feelings you have that are good will be sharper.
I suppose. I mean, again, this is one of the things where you find philosophical questions are how can I put this? They're very promiscuous philosophical questions. You get two philosophical questions in a room, then they will breed, and then they produce more philosophical questions. As soon as you say, can philosophy make your life better or worse? Is it good or bad? Then you're also raising the question, what do you mean by better or worse? So philosophy can make your life worse if by worse you mean you overthink things, that you can't make decisions anymore because there are so many options and you can't decide between them.
You reminded me of something. I must stop you there because that reminds me of something that's quite... I remember being at at university in a group of philosophers,
Mhm.
and we met outside and let's go for a drink or whatever, or let's go out for a night in the town.
That's where all the best philosophy is done.
Yeah, but it was a nightmare because no one could agree
Yes.
on where to go or
Yes.
what to do.
Well, it's Aristotle.
Well, we could do this and we could do that, and
Well, Aristotle made this point. I think it was Aristotle who made this point about. He talks. I think it was Aristotle's mule or Aristotle's donkey, and he said, that if you put a starving donkey in a room, and then why you put a starving donkey in a room, I don't know. But if you put a bale of hay equal distance to his left and to his right, he'll starve because he won't be able to decide which one to go for because there's no particular merit in going for one or the other, and he'll look left, right, and eventually just keel over. Now, obviously, a donkey wouldn't do that; he would just go for something. But there is that thing where you can be paralysed by indecision because there are too many. I'm terrible with options. People give me options, and I collapse. I want people to say, it's much more simple sometimes to have somebody say to you, go that direction, and I'm going to go that direction. It's like the sat-nav. I have endless arguments with my wife about the sat-nav. So I'll say the sat-nav has said we should take this route, and I'm just going to follow that route. And then my wife will say to me, but if we take this route, it'll bypass that, and if we take this route, it's actually quite nice, and we'll see a different kind of set of views and so on. And it's at that point I start pulling my hair out, because just somebody tell me which route to take. And philosophy can be a little bit like that. It's not comforting. I don't think philosophy is. So if you're looking for something that's going to make your life better in the sense of making you feel more comfortable, I don't think it does that. But if we're talking about the unexamined life is not worth living, if you're saying you want to understand how the world works and have some kind of plan, some kind of structure, which allows you to live coherently and consistently, so the decisions you're making are all linked up, then that is more satisfying. So it can be a more satisfying way of operating.
And we've kind of established that everybody has that. Everybody has that kind of drive.
I mean, it's interesting the questions people ask themselves. People will say, well, I'm not particularly philosophically minded. And yet they'll ask themselves all kinds of quite complex questions about the most mundane things, not traditionally kind of philosophical fare. I mean, you'll see kind of people asking themselves questions like, I don't know, should I buy these trainers? And that might be the big question of the day for them. Should I buy these trainers? And then the range of questions they ask are quite detailed. What am I buying them for? Am I buying them for running purposes, so they have to be utilitarian, practical, and really good for that? Or am I buying them just to kind of ponce around and show off at a club somewhere and look cool? Am I going to buy them because they are unique and nobody else has got them? Or am I going to buy them because I want to be part of a group of people who are all wearing the same trainers? I want to be part of the crowd. Can I buy them cheaper if I buy them online than if I buy them in a shop? Do they look nice inside and outside of a shop? Should I send photographs, to a friend and have them give me kind of, triangulate my knowledge here by having 2 or 3 friends comment on them as well? How much are they going to cost? Do I wait to the end of the month? All those sorts of things. I know it doesn't sound like you're asking philosophical questions, but you're asking questions about the way a particular decision is made and all the kind of connections and all the sort of influences. And we do that for the most trivial of things, and yet somehow we tend to, I think unless we're trained to, we tend to shy away from asking those questions with us at the centre because we somehow feel we're not properly equipped. But I think we are endlessly equipped to ask these questions.
And as well, what occurred to me is about that is what maybe is intimidating to people is when they read someone like Leibniz, something like that, or Spinoza. Is massively complicated, and there's lots going on there. But basically, they're trying the long way round,
absolutely,
to get to these simple questions.
Yes.
So there's that.
Yes, I mean classically, you've got people like Descartes, who was, René Descartes was kind of in many ways the father of the Enlightenment, the father of kind of modern Western thought. And all he wanted to do, when he boiled it all down, he was just asking the question, can I be sure that what I'm seeing in the world is actually really there? How can I be certain that everything I see is actually really there? And that's something that we ask ourselves all the time. How can I be sure? How can I be sure that so-and-so loves me? How can I be sure that these people respect me? How can I be sure that what I'm seeing is actually true, or I'm not misrepresenting myself? How can I be sure? And kind of certainty and conviction are things that we are really concerned about at all sorts of levels. And in a sense, that's kind of what he goes around it as in a very complex way. But that's really ultimately what Descartes is concerned about. How can I be sure?
And that's it as well. People who are not familiar with philosophy and not haven't read these things, don't know these names, are actually in some ways more equipped to challenge some of the things we're thinking. And they ask the most obvious questions, and I often find it with my children too, that you can go off on one about something, and they'll just say, they'll floor you with a really simple question.
Absolutely. I mean, kids are great on this. Kids have a natural philosophical disposition because they, as you know, I mean, you've got 2 kids because we've already established this. But they start out with these kind of with a very simple set of questions. And it's just identifying things in the world. So, as they're very young, they'll just point around and say, what's that? Well, that's a box. What's that? That's a ball. What's that? That's a cat. What's that? That's your mother. And they just want labels. They want to identify things in the world to get their bearings so they know where things are. Because that's how we map out the world. What are things in the world? Yeah. It's interesting because it seems to me that once children get past that kind of what is this identification issue, the next question, which is the kind of question they continue to be asking right the way through their childhood and just drives us all to distraction, is why. It's that kind of why question. Why should I do this? Why is that? Why is that a box? Well, it's a box because you can open it up and put things into it. Yeah. Why is that a cat? It's got 4 legs and fur, so that's what a cat is. Why is that my mother? Well, that's your mother because she's the only woman who would sleep with me. And they want reasons for why. They ask the why question, and I think human beings are like that. We have that kind of what identification question, which is just a relatively basic orientation question, and then we get hung up on the why. And in a sense, the philosopher, the professional philosopher, is somebody who's just got hooked on that kind of why. Why are things the way they are? Now, professional philosophers do that for a living, but we all do that. Why has he treated me that way? Why have I got to pay so much for this? Why is the government, trashing the NHS? Why? Those are the questions we ask, and that's the heart of philosophy, I think.
And does it give you ammunition? Does philosophy give you ammunition? Because an ordinary person might think, why should I bother with this? I can see, Mike's really an intelligent guy. He knows all this stuff. If I study some philosophy, is it going to really help me practically? Will I be able to make these decisions, or will I be able to, do these things?
I think you can. But it's. You're having to. I think you have to decide on the route you want to take. So once you've established all the kind of identifying marks on your map, where everything goes, where the holes are in the road, where the mountains are, where the rivers are, where the bridges are, you can then decide what route you want to take. Now your map and your route may be different from somebody else's, but it gives you that ability not to be able to predict how you're going to behave and to have a kind of consistent route through that. So you can say, okay, this is what I think philosophically about truth and about behaviour and about knowledge and about ethics and about politics. And this is the kind of this is where I stand on these things. So I can now make judgments without having to stop and agonise the entire time, And we do this. I mean, in a sense, we do this all the time. Most of us, I think, have a fairly robust ethic that we work with. We like to avoid doing harm to people. As a general rule, we like to respect people and people's property and that sort of stuff. So such that if you walk into a room and somebody's left, say for example, you've gone out to get a drink and you've left your wallet on the here. My immediate reaction is not going to be free wallet. I'm going to take that. I've already my kind of philosophical disposition has already allowed me to make that judgment call that I wouldn't take that even if it's there. And I think philosophy allows you to do that. It allows you to predict how you're going to behave, to be able to think quickly on your feet about how you're going to behave, and to link up all your thinking and your behaviour patterns. So you vote in a particular way, and you deal with people in a particular way, and you bring up your children in a particular way, and you park your car in a particular way, and you eat cook your food in a particular way, all based on the way you see the world and the way you see your place in it. And I think that makes for a much more satisfying life, because I think we're quite often torn and stressed because a lot of the things we do don't fit with each other. And we may not be always aware of that, but there are things we're doing which doesn't kind of fit very well with the way we see ourselves. And that, if you do something that's out of character for yourself, and you agonise, that's not me, I shouldn't have done that, I really shouldn't have done that. I think a lot of people have that as a kind of underlying life pattern, because they haven't thought about these things. They're quite often being kind of dragged in different directions.
So you stay intact as you are. It's Danny before philosophy or Danny after philosophy is essentially the same. But would you say that maybe you have these kind of initial intuitive ideas about what you feel about the world, and then philosophy comes along and gives you the names for them, or?
It can work like that, I think. I mean, I'm not sure that's always the most helpful thing. It seems to me that if you're just looking for a justification for your behaviour, so, I'm going to be a bastard, I'm going to nick your wallet, and I'm doing that because I'm a nihilist and a solipsist, and none of this really matters. I'm really trying to find ways of justifying why I'm doing what I'm doing. I think philosophy works better when it challenges the way you're operating, which makes you think, okay, well, if I've taken that wallet, what does that say about me, and what does that say about my relationship to you, and what I think other people are? So I think that kind of... there was a philosopher called Karl Jaspers, early 20th century, and he talked about boundary situations, and he said that people become most philosophical at boundary situations, at the kind of the point of life and death, or when their routines have been challenged. And he said it can be a number of things. There are no atheists in the trenches. So when there are bombs are falling and you're up close to death, those are when the challenges come in. That's when you start thinking about your life and about the meaning of existence and all those sorts of things. It's about anything that disturbs your routine. Even if your bus is late and you think, oh God, my bus is really late for work now. It's a boundary situation. It starts to challenge you. You get kind of angry, and you think, well, why am I angry about this? Is it the bus driver's fault? Is it the government's fault? If I'm late for work, am I going to be hated by my boss for getting in late? What is that going to mean to me when people start shouting at me for being late? So all of these things you start to kind of you start to ruminate on and think about. So I think philosophy is a challenging thing, and it shouldn't really be used to just justify a pattern of life.